Hi, welcome to our channel where we share the most intriguing stories. They built 50 houses on the wrong man's land. No warning, no permission, just asphalt, lies, and a sign that read, "Only 12 homes left." But this land wasn't empty. It had roots, history, and an owner ready to go to war. And trust me, they picked the wrong guy to steal from. I've never believed in selling off memories for profit. That's why I've held on to my grandfather's land for over 20 years, even when developers offered me more money than some people see in a lifetime. 120 acres of open, untouched earth just beyond the city limits, rolling hills, clusters of oak trees, wild deer that still run free at dusk. Some call it undeveloped. I call it sacred. The land came to me when I was just 24, after my grandfather passed away. He wasn't a man of many words, but he'd told me one thing every summer I spent helping him fix fences and cut grass out there. This land will outlive me, maybe even you. Take care of it. And I did. I didn't build on it. I didn't lease it. I just made sure it was clean, protected, and registered. The taxes got paid. The paperwork was airtight. I had the title in a safe at home and another copy in my lawyer's office, just in case. Most weeks I'd drive out to check on it, not because it needed anything. It was just my place to breathe. I live about 45 minutes away, in a tighter suburb, surrounded by fences and noise and HOA rules that I barely tolerate. But when I turned off that cracked asphalt road and drove through the open gate to the land I owned, everything else disappeared. No power lines, no neighbors yelling, just the sound of wind pushing through tall grass and birds that don't care what day it is. Over the years, friends kept asking why I didn't do something with it. A ranch, a housing project, a hunting lease. I always gave the same answer. Not everything needs to be turned into a strip mall to be valuable. And besides, this land was a time capsule, a patch of earth that still looked the way it did in 1963 when my grandfather bought it with his war. Pension in calloused hands. It's not just property, it's legacy. I kept it insured. I had surveillance drones fly over every few months. I even made sure my contact information was updated with the county. It was mine, legally, spiritually, historically. No liens, no development contracts, no zoning changes. I made absolutely certain no one could touch it. Which is why, on that blistering morning when I turned down that familiar dirt road and saw a stretch of brand new asphalt where my grandfather's favorite grove used to be, something inside me cracked. It was like walking into your childhood home and finding strangers living there, laughing like they belonged. I slammed the brakes and stared. Neatly paved roads, curbs, gutters, underground wiring, and houses. Dozens of them. Brand new cookie-cutter homes lined up like soldiers where there should have been prairie grass and silence. There was even a massive sign flapping in the wind. Willowgate Estates, only 12 homes left. From $399,000. It hit me in waves, shock, confusion, then anger so sharp it almost made me dizzy. I stepped out of my truck and into a reality that wasn't supposed to exist. Someone had built a whole damn neighborhood on my land. And I had no idea how or who. But I was about to find out. The security guard at the site entrance looked me up and down like I didn't belong there. I told him I was the landowner. His expression went from polite to pale in about half a second. He fumbled for his radio and mumbled something about getting the project manager. Enter Karen McAllister. I swear you could hear her heels clicking before you saw her. She marched toward me like she was about to audit my entire existence. Slim, sharply dressed in a crimson blazer and wielding a clipboard like it was a sword. She looked exactly like the kind of woman who'd put a fine on a lemonade stand for violating community beverage code. "Good morning," she said crisply. "Can I help you?" "I doubt it," I said. "I own this land." She didn't even blink. "I'm sorry, there must be some mistake. This property was acquired by Willowgate Development LLC last year. All the documentation is filed and approved. We've got permits, title transfer, zoning, everything in order." I stared at her. "Acquired from whom, exactly?" She gave a rehearsed smile. "Our representative worked through a broker who obtained certified documents from the original landholder. We were told the previous owner was no longer alive and had no next of kin." Now I blinked. "Lady, I am the next of kin. There was no sale, no broker, no permissions, and my land's not for sale. Not now, not ever." That's when her smile faltered, just slightly. She tried to recover, flipping through the pages on her clipboard. We had a notarized grant deed, signed and sealed. The project broke ground 3 months ago with full approval from the city. My stomach turned. Forged documents, false filings. Someone had impersonated me or my family, and the city must have rubber-stamped the whole thing. I told her I wanted to see every permit, every title document, now. She told me I'd need to contact the company's legal department. I told her the only department I was contacting was the sheriff's. That's when she shifted tactics, flattery and pressure. Look, Mr. Reeves, is it? We're already weeks from final phase inspection. People have bought into this community. Real families, veterans, seniors. Pulling the plug now, it would devastate lives. But maybe there's a way we can work this out amicably. Compensation. Partnership. I cut her off. You think this is about money? She studied me like I was a math problem she couldn't solve. You built on a man's graveyard, I said. And you think a check fixes that? As I turned and walked away, I heard her speaking into her earpiece. Voice clipped, tense. Yeah, we have a situation. Damn right you do. I didn't sleep that night. My mind was a furnace, blazing with questions and fury. By morning, I was on the phone with my real estate attorney, Frank Delgado, a man who'd once shut down an entire commercial strip over a zoning loophole. I gave him everything: deed copies, tax records, the original plat map. 30 minutes into reviewing it, he called me back and said, "Declan, they built an entire community on your land using forged documentation. This is war." And so we went to war. Frank filed a cease and desist to Willowgate LLC, demanding they halt all construction and sales immediately. We also filed a temporary restraining order with the court to freeze all transactions associated with the property. But I didn't stop there. I hired a drone team to fly over the site twice a day. High-resolution footage showing not just the scope of the development, but active construction crews, machinery tearing up the last untouched stretches of land. Every file was time-stamped, geotagged, and uploaded to the cloud. Then I went public. I reached out to 3 local news stations, 2 real estate watchdog blogs, and a regional paper that loved scandal almost as much as Sunday football. I gave them everything: photos, aerials, property documents, emails from Karen's office, even a clip of a contractor nervously admitting they weren't 100% sure who the real owner was. The headline hit the city newsfeed by Thursday morning. Developer builds 50 homes on the wrong man's land. Legal firestorm erupts in Willowgate. Karen called me later that day. The tone was different, less smug, more desperate. "Mr. Reeves, I'd like to resolve this quietly. No need to involve the media." "Karen," I said, "your 3 bulldozers passed quiet." By the end of the week, the city planning office launched an internal audit. The building inspector who signed off on the permits mysteriously took sick leave. And 3 pending sales at Willowgate were canceled after buyers got wind of the headline. But the real kicker, one of the supposed residents turned out to be a local councilman's cousin. He'd pre-purchased a home and now found himself knee-deep in scandal. His wife went full social media meltdown, calling it a targeted attack on middle-class families. I laughed so hard I almost choked on my coffee. But beneath the humor, the pressure was building. Karen doubled down, posting statements online about landowner confusion and clerical oversights. Meanwhile, HOA members, her cronies, began threatening me with nuisance complaints, trying to paint me as the villain delaying people's dreams. But I had a message for every last one of them. You don't build dreams on stolen dirt. The more noise I made, the louder Karen and her HOA got. It was like stepping on a hornet's nest and realizing the hornets had lawyers, drones, and a neighborhood Facebook group. They started small, passive-aggressive letters taped to my truck windshield when I parked near the site. One morning, I found a fake citation tucked under my wiper, citing me for unauthorized use of subdivision roadways. It wasn't from the city. It was printed on Willowgate HOA letterhead and signed K. McAllister, President. Cute. Then came the anonymous complaints filed with the county, that my land had environmental hazards, that my abandoned acreage was attracting vermin, that I'd threatened workers on site. None of it stuck, but that wasn't the point. It was a coordinated smear campaign designed to rattle me, maybe even provoke me into doing something reckless. They even tried surveillance. I caught 2 separate contractors parked on the county road shoulder with cameras aimed at my land. When I approached one, he claimed he was doing soil assessments. The guy was wearing boat shoes. I took pictures of him and his license plate anyway. But the worst was what they did to the land itself. One morning, I drove out and found fresh concrete poured into one of the shallow ponds near the southern edge, an illegal move, likely meant to create a foundation extension. Another time, someone had clearly driven a grader past the property line, uprooting several oak saplings I'd planted years ago. I set up motion-triggered cameras around the entire perimeter after that. The next week, they caught 2 workers deliberately dragging construction debris across the property boundary, dumping twisted rebar and broken drywall into a ravine. I called the sheriff. He came out, looked at the footage, whistled low and muttered, "Looks like they're testing your patience." They were. And they were organized about it too. HOA members started patrolling like a militia. Every time I came by, I saw the same faces walking their dogs or standing with arms folded near the lot edges. I even overheard one man telling another, "We'll wear him down. He'll sell. Just wait." Sell? They still thought this was about money. Karen herself showed up during one of my site visits. She had the nerve to bring a bottle of wine, like this was a dinner party instead of an invasion. "I still think we can make this work," she said, handing me a document titled Code Development Partnership Agreement. I didn't even open it. I tossed it on the hood of her Lexus and said, "Karen, this land isn't for sale. But if you keep pushing me, something else will be." "Your luck." Her smile froze. The next day, someone spray-painted "Land Pirate" in red across my boundary fence. Real original, I left it there. It was almost flattering. But I knew now. This wasn't just a land dispute. It was a war of attrition. And they were betting I'd cave before they did. They had no idea who they were dealing with. The courthouse smelled like old paper and cold sweat. I'd never stepped foot inside a courtroom before that day. Not for anything serious. Now here I was, front and center, fighting to reclaim a legacy someone tried to pave over like it was just another blank lot on a zoning map. I wore a suit, not because I wanted to, because this was war, and I was dressing for the kill. Karen showed up 20 minutes late, all swagger and spray tan. Her smile didn't reach her eyes, not anymore. She had a legal team in tow, 3 men in charcoal suits, and 1 younger woman clutching a leather binder like a life preserver. Karen didn't look worried. She looked inconvenienced. Like the trial was some HOA complaint meeting she'd rather be running. She caught my eye across the room and gave me a tight nod. I didn't return it. My attorney Frank, steady as a surgeon, leaned over and whispered, "Ready to end this?" Born ready. Day 1 was procedural. Paperwork, timelines, exhibits logged into evidence. But the tension, palpable. You could feel it vibrating in the floorboards. Karen sat straight-backed, arms folded, face locked in her favorite expression, forced patience laced with disdain. She didn't speak, not yet, but she watched me. Oh, she watched. Day 2, the hammer dropped. We presented the fraudulent grant deed. The notary had her license revoked 3 years before the signature date. The representative who allegedly handled the land sale. A dead-end shell identity with no tax ID. No physical office, no public history. Every document Willowgate submitted to the county had been built on that lie. Every house they sold, every permit they filed, every sidewalk they poured, illegal. The judge, a razor-sharp woman with ice in her veins, raised one eyebrow and asked Karen's team, "Do you have any independently verified evidence that Mr. Reeves sold this land?" Karen's lead counsel shifted in his seat. "Your Honor, we were misled by our broker." "I'm not asking about your broker," the judge snapped. "I'm asking about your client's actions." Karen blinked for the first time, looking uncertain. Frank smiled like a wolf that smelled blood. Then came the drone footage. Dozens of videos. Aerial shots of graders chewing through my trees. Bulldozers rolling over untouched soil. Footage from the day after. My legal injunction was filed. Construction crews still working, pretending like nothing had changed. They weren't just trespassers. They were arrogant trespassers. Then came the workers. A contractor testified under oath that he was told, direct quote, "The real landowner abandoned the property years ago, and the sale was a formality." When asked who said that, he didn't even flinch. Karen McAllister. She said she'd handle the paperwork, that we weren't to worry. Karen's face flushed so fast it looked like sunburn. For the first time, she broke composure, leaned toward her attorney, and hissed something that was picked up faintly by the mic. "They weren't supposed to say my name." Oops. Day 4, I took the stand. I told them about my grandfather. I told them about the land. I told them about that morning I rolled in expecting to see grass and oak trees and instead found a sales tent with balloons and a banner advertising only 12 homes left. I didn't sugarcoat a damn thing. I described the harassment, the sabotage, the men parked outside in SUVs watching my every move, the trees they bulldozed, the letters Karen sent pretending to be acting on behalf of the community. The court was silent when I finished. Even the clerk looked rattled. Karen was next. She didn't testify willingly. Her lawyer tried to avoid it, but the judge insisted, given the scale of the fraud, she needed to hear from the developer directly. Karen walked to the stand like someone walking toward a PR disaster with no spin team. Under questioning, she denied forging anything, denied direct involvement, claimed she relied entirely on legal professionals to verify documents. Then Frank hit her with an email, one of hers, sent from her personal address. The subject line, "Don't worry about land guy. He hasn't been here in years." She looked like she'd swallowed a pine cone. After that, it unraveled fast. Jury deliberation took 10 hours. Long by some standards, but not when you're about to flatten someone's empire. The verdict, all development was illegal. HOA was an unauthorized, non-binding entity. Karen McAllister, guilty of real estate fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud, and trespassing. Sentencing, 3 years probation, 400 hours community service. The judge specified, no administrative work, manual labor only. A lifetime ban from any HOA board or real estate venture in the state of Texas. Civil penalties. $110,000 in damages, including $50,000 paid directly to me for mental and emotional distress. Willowgate LLC ordered to pay full restitution to all misled buyers and to reimburse the city for illegal infrastructure, installations, and then. The cherry on top, Karen was ordered to write personal apology letters to each of the original buyers and to me. Hand-signed, mailed certified. I got mine 2 weeks later. White envelope, embossed initials. Inside, one typed page and one sorry excuse for a signature. I deeply regret the confusion and distress caused. No mention of fraud, no real ownership, just hollow regret and tightly clenched teeth. But that was fine, because that letter now sits framed above my fireplace, right next to the original deed my grandfather signed in 1963. And every time I walk past it, I smile, because Karen tried to take something priceless from me with a pen and a lie. And I took her empire with the truth and a stack of good old-fashioned receipts. I thought winning the lawsuit would feel like slamming a door. In truth, it felt more like opening one and letting the fallout spill out like a busted fire hydrant. The morning after the verdict, my inbox looked like a war zone, realtors begging to amicably transfer back their unsellable houses, neighbors from Willowgate asking if they could negotiate a peaceful resolution, and one guy trying to buy my story for a podcast called Suburban Nightmares. Tempting, honestly. But first things first, I got my land back, legally and publicly. The county reissued updated plat maps with my raised name, reinstated as the sole and rightful owner of all 120 acres. The fraudulent filings were wiped. My property lines were restored like a glitch undone. The city planning office, red-faced and humiliated, issued a formal apology. The building inspector who'd rubber-stamped everything without verifying ownership was quietly fired, and their entire permitting system was thrown into review by a third-party oversight board. I heard whispers that a few more heads rolled behind closed doors. As for the development, a ghost town. Half-built houses stood like skeletal reminders of corporate overreach. Construction was halted. For sale signs vanished overnight. The few buyers who had already moved in, gone. Every one of them either got refunded by the bank or sued Karen into oblivion. Karen. Ah, yes. Karen McAllister. Her once pristine reputation as a community visionary was now buried somewhere beneath the legal equivalent of a strip mine. HOA members turned on her the minute the judge's gavel dropped. Some even issued public statements claiming they'd been manipulated too. Cowards. Karen's court-ordered apology letter leaked online, of course. It opened with, "To whom it may concern, I deeply regret the distress caused. But my favorite part? Her signature was notarized. For real this time. She started her community service the same week, picking up trash in the same park where she once hosted HOA barbecues. I drove by once, purely coincidentally, of course. She was in an orange vest, glaring at a sandwich wrapper like it owed her money. I didn't honk, but I smiled. Meanwhile, the contractor company tried spinning the debacle as a communication breakdown. Good luck with that. They're still under investigation and hemorrhaging clients. And the land. Mine again, untouched where it mattered, with the legal firewalls now stronger than a Pentagon server. I filed updated title insurance, layered in boundary reinforcement orders, and, just for fun, trademarked the phrase, "not for sale." Ever. In connection with the land's name, people assumed I'd flip the property and cash out. I didn't. Instead, I hosted a small gathering for friends, family, and a few of the people who stood by me during the mess. We grilled, drank beer, and laughed about the time someone tried to bulldoze a legacy and got bulldozed in court instead. At one point, my lawyer Frank raised a bottle and toasted, "To Declan, the only man I know who turned a land grab into a legal tango and walked away with both the land and the music rights." It stuck with me, because this whole ordeal wasn't just about dirt and deeds. It was about legacy, boundaries, and not letting the Karens of the world weaponize paperwork and fake politeness to steal what's sacred. 6 months later, the land looked like it had never been touched, at least not by bulldozers and bad intentions. The half-built homes had been torn down and hauled away, the foundations filled, and the tire tracks erased by new grass that didn't care about past trespasses. But I left one thing up. A sign. A big one. 8 feet tall, bolted into stone, impossible to miss. Willowgate Estates, 50 homes built on the wrong man. Private property, not for sale. Still not dead. Underneath it, embedded into a granite slab I had carved locally, were the words, "Double-check the deed. Don't build on someone else's roots." Tourists stopped to take selfies. Real estate agents brought interns to see it as a cautionary tale. Someone even added it to Google Maps as a local curiosity. I didn't mind. If it kept one more Karen from getting power hungry, it was worth every penny. To celebrate, I threw a party. Not a quiet one. A full-blown, open-bar, wood-fired pizza, backyard screening of the castle kind of party. I called it Land Liberation Day. We had speakers set up under the oaks, string lights running from trees to fence posts, and coolers full of beer with labels I printed myself that read, "Ho Tears, best served cold." And, yeah, I invited a stand-up comic. He came dressed as a fictional HOA president named Sharon O'Rules and passed out fake fines to guests. Violation, laughing too loudly without permit. Infraction, bringing joy within 50 feet of a property line. At 1 point, Frank, the lawyer who helped bulldoze the legal nonsense, stood up with a slice of sausage mushroom and made a toast. To Declan, the only guy who turned a developer's nightmare into a neighborhood folktale and made zoning law cool. I was halfway through my second plate of pepperoni when a group of folks from the former HOA zone shyly walked up to me. They didn't apologize for Karen. They didn't need to. They just raised their drinks and said, "Thanks for reminding everyone that not everything should be paved over." That stuck with me, because this wasn't just a win for me. It was for every quiet landowner who's been steamrolled by people in power suits with clipboards and fake smiles. It was for every tree someone called wasted space, every fence line someone tried to move in the name of progress, every homeowner who got bullied by a board of tyrants in khakis. That night, under the stars with music playing and the smell of charred crust in the air, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I was just full, not just from pizza, from peace. And if Karen ever drives past the new sign at the front of my land, well, she's welcome to read it, just not to park.